All right, so we finished Earthbound Beginnings, or Mother, as it's known in Japan. Um, and I guess we're skipping Earthbound since you and I have both played that. And you had your whole series on that Bookworm Games. Check
Yeah,
it out, but that I feel like that's been talked about enough online. So that's why we were just skipping right ahead to Mother 3.
yeah, yeah. I think it's been a little while since I played Earthbound, but it's still pretty much imprinted on my brain, and I remember enough of it that uh, if there are any references to it, I think I'll pick up on them. And well, I don't know. I mean, when you first start this game, it definitely is pulling some of the like mechanics and just like interface from Earthbound, and it's leaning on some of the just the feel of the game. At least for me, I thought. What about you? What were your impressions as you started up? Because this is the first time you played it, right?
Yeah, so I had started it maybe a year ago, sometime in the pandemic, but I had only gotten to the part where you take control of Flint. So that's what, maybe 15, 20 minutes into the game.
It's nothing, yeah.
And so I restarted it, but that's about as far as I've gotten. I do know I've tried my best to avoid spoilers. I do know one thing that happens, but I think maybe you learned that early on. Uh, but yeah, no, I definitely got Earthbound feels just from the opening. You know, you name your characters. This time they actually kind of have a background and they're doing weird animations and stuff like that. But you have the same um, pick your name, pick your favorite food, name your dog. Uh, Boney,
Right. Right.
kind of a weird name, or is it Bunny? Because it's it's spelled the same way as honey.
Interesting. Yeah, that was something that I was looking at. There's some translation notes, right? So one thing that's weird about this game is it never got an official release in English translation.
Yes.
Although it's like objectively like a really good game and part of a very popular, series slash sequel to a cult classic. What, however you look at it, like it makes no sense.
I
Um,
mean,
but
when Terry Crews is tweeting that you should localize Mother 3, I don't know how you can refuse that kind of endorsement.
oh my gosh, I know. It's uh, it's something that the translator points out. That their names, the characters' names, all have like meanings or at least associations, and this is pretty interesting. So Lucas and Klaus, um, their names, those are the twins. Their default names. Uh, they come from a book called The Notebook. Um, that was published in French originally, but has been translated into English. So that's on my reading list now.
Okay,
And like a basic meaning of Flint's name seems to be like related to the kind of gun, like a Flint uh, lock gun,
interesting.
and then yeah, or a matchlock or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
And then Hinawa's name, the mother character here, is apparently like another kind of gun, like an old-fashioned um, gun of some kind. And
interesting.
so Boney, if you look at the meanings possible for that name, it could be related to like a bonfire, is what the translator offered. But I mean, it makes more sense that it would just be like the kind of thing a dog likes to chew on. I would think. So I don't know. Anyway, could kind of go down a rabbit hole with all that, but um, it's weird to me that they all have just one don't care option. Also, right? Like instead of
Oh,
toggling through a bunch of different names, if you say don't care over and over, it's still just the same default names. Whereas like your food and your favorite thing can be lots of different things if you say don't care more than once. Um, so it's kind of interesting. These are
yeah.
like their canonical names. Yeah.
I hadn't even tried to do the don't care more than once. I just kind of did the default like once and then
Yeah.
just because I don't know. The names I come up with are stupid. So I just figured I'd just say whatever the game tells me it is. But that's interesting. I did not realize. For a second, I thought you were talking about the Notebook, the movie with Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams.
Not the
back in.
romance one, no.
Oh, okay. I was a little worried. I was like, I don't remember Klaus and Lucas in that movie. I've seen it quite a few
Uh,
times. Uh, oh,
oh man. Um, it's like a apparently a pretty dark story, and apparently it's part of a trilogy also. Like the author went on to write a couple more, and so I'm not sure what the intention there is, other than like it's kind of fun that the twins are sort of opposites, and their names are like acronyms of each other, right? Um, yeah.
yeah. No, and I think this is the second instance of there being twins in this series. Weren't is it Mimi and Minnie in Earthbound
Oh yeah.
Beginnings?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And they're kind of just like a duplication of each other. Like they don't seem to have different personalities as far as I could tell.
Right.
Whereas this is definitely doing like a good twin, evil twin kind of thing is set up here pretty early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess another thing I wanted to mention is before we even get started, before you even get to the character kind of naming screen, is you have this Mother 3, and it's kind of metallic with
Yeah,
wooden portions of it, so it's kind of like a combination, I guess, of the modern and the natural or the supernatural. Um, I don't
for sure.
I don't think that there was any reference to Gygus or who the antagonist of this was at the very beginning. Was there? In Earthbound, they had the war on Gygus at the beginning, so you kind of knew um,
Right.
ultimately what the game is going to be about.
Right. No, I don't think there's any screen or anything that shows you um, again, like that Earthbound War on Gygus makes it really clear that it's a sequel to Mother, right? Like if you know what Mother's about, then um, you have a pretty clear sense that this is like Gigas Strikes Back sort of feel. Whereas
Mm,
Mother 3 doesn't make any direct reference to the previous games right up front in that way. It doesn't have a subtitle as far as I know, the way that Mother 2 did. Um, and so yeah, that like metallic and wooden thing um, seems to be like a real departure, actually, and it gets picked up, within the game as you get to like one of your first bosses is like this reconstructed caribou, I think, right? And so it's
yes.
like this like unholy combination of cyborg and living creature, so
Yeah, which is
something like
not
that going on.
not something that we saw in the other two games, right? I mean,
I don't think
animals
so.
maybe went crazy, um,
Right.
but there was no instance of them, I think, being modified uh, by someone else to, I guess I don't know what the ultimate goal of that mechanical caribou is, and I guess I'll have to play the game to
Yeah.
figure that out. But those seem to
Yeah.
be intentionally man-made. I'll just say man. It's
Right.
whoever's in the pig mask. Uh,
Right.
it seems to be trying to take over. Um, and it kind of, I don't know. I guess whenever I see after playing Near Automata, whenever I see the merging of like the technology with the organic, I think about that game.
Yeah,
Although
for
I
sure.
I don't think it was necessarily that the organic and the mechanical merged. It was more like they coexisted together and each kind of flourished. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
but yeah. So
No. The other thing I will say about the pig people, right? Like, if you know that Pokey's name was originally Porky, or could be read as Porky, then I think that that's also like a hint that there is some connection there. Um, that the um, music that they play, right, is like this theme song um, that might refer to some, megalomaniac leader. Pokey becomes like a good candidate for that role. Um,
yeah,
you haven't heard his name yet.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, okay, well, I guess like we can start talking about the game itself. So after you
Sure.
start, what you pan to the nowhere island,
Right. Yeah.
and it looks like it's an island with two mountain peaks, one with snow on top and one without.
Hmm.
Um, and I I think this kind of duality, this yin and yang type
Hmm. Hmm.
theme is going to be present throughout the game. I mean, you have Lucas and Klaus. You have these twin peaks. But anyway, so we start. We wake up as Lucas in our bed, um, and then we go downstairs in our pajamas, and then we try to leave. And Mother says you have to go back upstairs and change out of your other clothes. Um, I guess Lucas slept in while Klaus was out playing with the Dragos.
Right.
Um, and so eventually we meet up with them. They look like very ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Um, but you quickly learn that you can dash into. Well, it teaches. It's basically a tutorial for how to dash and run, um, which thank goodness for. Being able to run makes the game so much more enjoyable.
It
Um,
does. And this is not just any run, right? It's like it's an action that has effects other than making you move faster. Like your animation actually changes to like a running rather than just like a fast walk. And when you run into things, stuff happens, right? That's the other thing this is teaching you. Not just that you
yes,
can run, but that if you do run into things, you might have effects from that.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like it's a pretty ideal place to be. It's very idyllic.
Mhm.
You're visiting your mom. I forget what's her name.
Hinawa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher that every time. I don't think we'll be
Well,
mentioning it for very long, though.
it's okay. Yeah, she's she's not gonna take that long as she. Well, I was gonna point out about names real quick, just that nowhere is a possible translation of utopia, as well. So like the term utopia, literally the U part there, can be rendered either as good or as no or not, like the negation of topia, the place, right? So
Oh,
it literally can mean good place or no place, depending
okay.
on how you read. And so these nowhere islands, I guess, might refer to like a utopia in the classic sense.
Well, that's
Because we don't know that much about this place right away, but it emerges later that like nothing bad has ever happened here, and we sort of don't know about bad things here.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that to my attention because that makes a lot more sense that it would be utopia. Um, Interesting. The Japanese language is very interesting. So yeah, so what do we do? So yeah, we're visiting your basically I guess your grandfather's place, and your father um, did not make the journey with you. He's still staying at your regular house. Um,
Right.
and then what? So your mother ends up writing a note and mails it, and then we take over control of the father, whose name is Flint.
Yes. And it's funny, like she's saying, like, you stayed behind to take care of the sheep. You're always taking care of the sheep. You always smell like sheep. Maybe you should take a vacation once in a while. That was amusing to me. The tone of that letter, that's pretty much like all we get of her character, really, is like, okay, she's like a mom. She likes to cook for people. And she also seems to want people to have a good time, like to get a break from things. Um, but for whatever reason, Flint like is kind of a hardworking guy, I guess. Like he doesn't want to take a break. Um, and this is already like in a way more personality than the mothers and fathers of previous games really have. Much less to play as the father. That's like quite the twist, right? Because he's always famously like off screen, and he's the way that you save games. Whereas here, it's by talking to frogs, of course. You talk to frogs, and they record your memories for you. So
Yes, and they are
it's,
plentiful.
they're everywhere. Yeah, like every other screen's got a frog.
Yeah, I guess they did that because it's a mobile RPG. It originally came out for the Game Boy Advance, so I guess the thought was, oh, you might only have 5 minutes to play.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to put a frog like every screen transition so that you can save at any given moment for when your parent, your mom or dad yells at you. You got to turn it off. Get out
Right.
of the car. We're going to dinner. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's I guess in Earthbound Beginnings and Earthbound, I I don't know if it's explicitly stated or just implied that the father's not there because he's out working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so he's away from that. It's not that he's not like a loving father. Obviously, he's giving you money, he's calling you, he's giving you advice to sleep, get some rest. You work too hard
Right.
like your mother. So
Yeah.
it's not. So it is interesting that it's another father who's like caught up with work. His work just seems to be at a house that his family, you know, generally resides at. But they just
Hmm.
happen to be kind of on a, I don't know, vacation or visiting their grandfather,
Exactly.
Alec.
Yes. Yes. And and so yeah, we transition over to this Flint guy, and he seems to be basically a silent protagonist, whereas the others, I mean, when you're playing as Lucas, I guess he's silent also, but the others all like talk a good bit. Um, and he's yeah, like a farmer. He hangs out with animals a lot. He apparently can talk to animals. Is like the only hint of his psychic powers, I guess. Or maybe just another thing about this place is that like everyone can talk to animals. Maybe that's part of the like idyllic world that we're in. But yeah, so your dog is there, Boney, um, and you've got to sort of figure out um, like what to do about this situation. It's like foreshadowed um, in the last scene we see with the mother sending the carrier pigeon. Then something else like this mysterious thing floats by, um, and they start lighting fires in the forest, right? And so you're sort of on this quest. It's got like a few different stages to it, right? But basically, you're trying to um, help with the fire, save a couple people who are stranded in the forest, but also ultimately like get reunited with your family who are stranded on the other side of the forest. Um, so it's an interesting kind of like spiral that takes place here. Um, once you're controlling Flint, the game really properly starts. I would say it's called Chapter One, the night of the funeral. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Um, and I will say it's very cool to finally play with the character that I remember being in the screenshots for Mother 3 on the
Yeah.
N64, where you had the cowboy and the dog like howling. Um,
Yes.
it's one of the very few like imagers that we ever got in that magazine, and
Oh my gosh.
I still remember um, just being so disappointed when nothing ever came of it. Um,
I know. I know. Flint's he's a weird looking dude. He looks very like somber, you know. His face is sort of enigmatic under this like cowboy hat that he's got on. And I think it's a bit later that people start commenting on like, you know, you look really sad. You've got to start smiling more. And it's weird because the characters so like in the previous games, there people comment on how you're like always smiling. I want to say um, that's something that people are like noticing about your character. You're sort of a happy-go-lucky person. Um, this one's this is different. Yeah, in a lot of ways. Um, let's see. You've got your tagging along annoying character,
hmm
um, the guy named Thomas, who runs really fast and
Yes.
has a bullhorn that he's like using to, or what is it like a siren basically, um, to alert everybody. Uh, the whole cast of the village is like overwhelming because they all have names.
Yes.
Um, it's kind of exhausting to try to keep track of who's who here. Um,
Yeah,
but
I don't know how relevant a lot of them are going to be. There's
yeah,
like a couple, I think what the one father's name is Lighter. One of them's like Fuel.
lighter and fuel. That's who's stuck in the forest. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
And gosh, there's the really tall guy who I really like. That's
yeah.
like whacking the bell with a little hammer.
Yeah, No idea what that is. I have no idea what that's a
It's,
reference to.
I don't know. He's my favorite, I think.
Just
And
so bizarre.
yeah.
Why is that there? Like, I'm willing to accept the dinosaurs being there because I feel like those have already been established in the lore, when you go down to the underworld. Um
Hmm.
through the Tenda village, it's like, oh, okay, so like dinosaurs, that's fine. That's not a bridge too far. But this tall guy who you can't even talk to.
I know. It's the weirdest thing. And he um what's the thing? Oh, okay. So his feet aren't quite big enough to be the giant's feet, right? Like it would be one thing if he were that big
Yeah.
to be the giant that steps in giant step, but no, no, he's not quite that big. Um there's also to go back to the dragons, there's like a little temple where you are encouraged to like offer a prayer. And there's a symbol of like two dragons, one light, one
Hmm.
dark. Um, and when you do talk to it or check it, the voice from the game starts to tell you like that it wants your name. That's so it's much earlier in this one that the player is prompted to um, enter their name, their own actual name, um, and
Yeah.
then the voice tells you to like forget that this ever happened. So kind of weird.
Yes, it was very
There's this,
quick to break that fourth wall.
yeah,
I noticed
yeah.
that as well. And then again, yeah, there's the white and dark dragon, that yin and yang type.
Hmm.
Again,
Yeah, and I guess the fire and stuff like again the names of the characters could possibly be a reference to violence or something like that. Um, but it's pretty dramatic. It makes you feel like there's like a time limit on your actions for whatever reason, although there really isn't, as far as I can tell. You can just kind of meander around. But it makes things feel urgent, right? That bell going off and all these characters like milling around and um, yeah, there's this like definite uh, push to get going to do stuff. So I don't know. Did you explore much, or did you just kind of go straight on through and progress things?
I think I did not explore too much. I went to the hot springs and checked that out.
Well, yeah,
Um,
nice.
Talked to as many of the sparrows as I could,
Oh
who
yeah,
are kind of your tutorial for the game. They give you helpful hints on how to play the game. Um,
right.
there's still one. I don't know if I missed the sparrow or if we haven't encountered it yet. I still don't know how the combos work when you're
Right.
fighting. Uh,
Right.
Kind of, to me, it's kind of reminiscent of Super Mario RPG, where if you time an input after you do, your first hit, um, you'll do like a second hit and deal even more damage. In this game,
Right.
if you do a normal bash and then you get it into some certain rhythm, I think I've gotten up to 5 hits,
Nice.
but I don't know how I do it. It's like I maybe get multiple hits like 20% of the time. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm doing, but uh,
Yeah. I don't think it's been explained yet, and I don't remember when it gets explained. But it has to do with the battle music, actually. Um, so tapping the button in time with the beat of the music. So like that part of Mario RPG where you're racing the
mhm.
Yoshis,
Yes.
right? Where you have to like tap a certain rhythm. It's more like that actually than the battle timing system in that game. But definitely probably inspired by it. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
The
So sorry for going on that tangent about the fighting, but yeah. So I checked the sparrows. I did go to the church. I did the prayer, put my name in,
huh.
um, and then I guess I feel like there wasn't much you could deviate. Um,
That's true.
most of the paths were kind of. I tried to explore, but all the paths were either like closed off because there's like a burning branch in the way, or if you started going there, to be like, hey, yeah, don't go there yet, and like a character would
Exactly.
stop you from doing so. So I felt like this part was pretty linear. Uh, but yeah, we get
Yeah.
to Fuel and Lighter's house. Uh, the kid is in the burning building. You run in, and then you have your first experience with like a very weird creature, I guess. You fight this flying rat.
Right.
Um,
Uh, yeah, and it's like it's flying around. You can see it at first, but
yeah,
it's not something you can attack right away. Um, which I don't. It's a little unclear to me why that is, because this is set up like a boss fight, but then later this is just an enemy that you run into. It's it's nice that you can sort of see enemies outside of battle and avoid them if you want to, but this one is clearly like unavoidable, at least for a normal playthrough. And yeah, I think the battles are like interesting, and having that combo thing like makes them more engaging in a way. Um, the game gives you a ton of items.
yeah,
Like it lets you stock up on items really easily, and that seems to be because you can't go and buy things, right? Like you said, this part of the game, at least, there's no way to really deviate. It's sort of linear. So just like every other battle, I feel like you get some healing items, and yeah, it's pretty easy so far. Uh, it's I guess the hot spring too, right? Like it really encourages you to just relax, not just like uh, you know rush through. But anytime you need healed up, you just can go and take a few seconds there.
yeah.
So I like that about this game. Yeah, it's way easier than the NES, or even really the SNES version. I would say, at least so far.
Yeah. Oddly enough, we don't really know like what we're trying to do here. We haven't gotten anything like a sound stone. Um,
Mhm.
so I guess we don't really know what our end goal is, I guess.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was just kind of thinking about that. But yeah, I like the hot springs in the sense that yeah, you kind of have to like it's like maybe 10 seconds you have to wait. But it gives you
Yeah.
like enough time that you kind of just like sit there, enjoy the music, kind of like just reflect on what's going on. It's like a nice little pause in the game.
Yeah, and if you go there when you've got the little kid in tow,
Hmm.
Fuel, and you're all like blackened with soot, um, everyone comments on how you're covered in soot and ash, and then you can wash off part of it, but
Hmm.
not all of it if you go to the hot spring, right? It's like because you don't submerge your head, so now you're walking around with like a blackened head and face and like shoulders basically, and then the rest of you is clean from the hot springs. So it's just kind of funny, and I don't know quite what to make of the um, like repeated they repeatedly draw attention to how you're covered in soot and ash. I don't know quite what to do with that, other than like, gosh, it seems like it's inviting like a discussion of race. Really, like there are some people with different skin tones in the village, but not that many. Uh, it's and it doesn't make clear like what nationality we're supposed to be. Other games are really clear that you're like in America or an America type place,
Hmm.
but this one is sort of like ambiguous in that regard. Um, it's just sort of vaguely an island. But
Are you
the village
trying?
is called. No, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was going to say. I mean, are you trying to uh, say that there might be some kind of like blackface type
it's
issues?
kind of like that. Yeah, it's weird. But the name of the village is Tasmili, which
Hmm.
sounds like possibly Australian, like Tasmania or something. I don't know. Um, it's apparently like a made up word that might refer to dragons in Japanese. The Yeah, there's like a sort of a American Western pastiche type thing going on. There's like a desert kind of around the grandfather's house. There's like a teepee that one of the characters lives in. And he has like dreads. He's like
Ah,
the
yes,
one darker skinned character that we really know so far.
yes.
So yeah, I don't know quite. what is going on with this. It's weird, and characters in the game keep drawing attention to it. So just like notice that.
No, to be fair, I
Uh,
mean, these characters know what these people are supposed to look like. They would know if there's like a bunch of soot on their face.
yeah,
And I would be
yeah.
asking that. And then I'd also, if they were like, only their face was covered in soot, then yeah. I'd be like, well, why?
It's like,
How'd you not get it on like the rest of your clothes? Why didn't you just put your head like in the hot springs?
right, right,
But
yeah.
so we get the, I forget, when does the rain start?
Um, yeah, good question. Right, so we save the kid, um, and his father is like injured, but is gonna be okay. Um, apparently he's like your rival, right? They've been like buddies since childhood, but there's kind of like a rivalry between them. Um, but he lends you like his big stick that he's always carrying around, his lumber. So it's like a boost to your attack, but it slows you down to use it. So anyway, yeah, it seems like roughly around the time that everyone's sort of okay, and then they're sort of noticing like, uh-oh, the others should be back by now. Then one of the characters like says the only thing that would be weirder is if it like started to rain and then it starts. And apparently, again, this is like a thing that doesn't happen that often, right? It's like it's always sunny here. It's the Sunshine Forest, but now it's raining. Which is good because it puts out the fire, but also it's cold, and it's like unpleasant, and everyone's like, "What's going on?
Yeah.
This is not normal." Um, yeah, so
Well,
then it's like round two of the quest, right? It's like now we're trying to find mom and the kids.
yeah. And I guess, I don't know, maybe this is a stretch, but fire and water, I feel like, again, those are kind of two
Yeah,
opposing um, forces in nature. I don't mean to sound um, ignorant with respect to Japanese culture, but I feel like I've heard that fire and water are like two of the elements, I guess. I don't know. Or like
sure.
two opposing elements, I should say.
Totally. Yeah. And there's definitely something going on with like how to deal with anger. That's it comes up very much in the sort of emotions that the two twins feel, right? Is like one is just like intensely angry and wants revenge. The other is just like intensely sad. And so it's like fire and water again in that regard.
Yeah, and I guess now's a good time to point out everyone seems to be commenting on how much of like a loser Lucas is, right?
They really do. Yeah, they do.
Without like calling him a loser, they're like, oh, he's coddled. Like the other one's like daring and outgoing, and he's fine. Lucas, on the other hand, he sleeps in late. His mom has to tell him to put on pajamas before he goes plays with the Dragos. Um, it's very sad. So yeah, so right. So first part of the mission is to save lighter and fuel. Um, and then it starts to rain, and then we have to go and start looking for, I can't pronounce the mother's name. I forget.
Hinawa. Yeah.
Hanawa. And the boys, because, per that note that she had sent, they were supposed to be back by now.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Right.
this is where
And I get Oni. Yeah, the dog joins.
mhm, who
Um,
who sticks around with
dog.
us a lot longer than King does in Earthbound.
Yeah, he seems to be like a real party member because he can carry items. He can equip items, at least collars. Um, and yeah, he interacts with other characters as well. Like he joins the party, he sticks around, and then he leaves the party because he needs to like comfort um, or help in some way with some other character. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, he's like essentially a person.
right. Yeah, no, he's like actually a useful character. I don't. Did you say he gains levels?
Mm-hmm. That's right. He
I,
sure
f-
does.
I feel like that's kind of the mark of someone who's like in your group who's like actually a character, is if they like start gaining
Right.
levels if you level them up. I mean, I have no idea if we get to play with Boney anymore after this. I should probably rephrase that. Um, But yeah, so we're like going through the rain, we're looking, and we run into Wes.
Yeah, I was so glad. I forgot about this character. He's like a wise old man type figure. Um, People don't take him seriously because he's so old, uh,
Hmm.
but he has some tricks up his sleeve. And he summons again. Boney is responsible here. He like gives him a smelly sock, and Boney goes and fetches the son, who is very much like Lucas, like sort of lazy. He's sleeping very heavily, and Boney like drags him part of the way. He also has like a hurt leg, or in some way like doesn't have the full use of this one leg of his, so he sort of hobbles
Hmm.
as he moves. Um, but he has these great skills because Wes has taught him the thief arts. Right,
Hmm.
they've been training secretly for this moment. And his default name is Duster,
Yes.
uh, which is like an article of clothing, but apparently in this case, like refers to the thing you use to like dust your house. So um,
Oh man,
that's his name.
I was thinking of the Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but in one episode, one of the characters starts wearing a duster jacket, um, and like everyone else thinks it looks really cool. Like you'd expect him to be like the duster's really stupid, but um, no,
It's
it's
so
really
cool.
cool. Um, yeah, no. So I guess yeah. So Duster he comes by with his hobbled leg. He starts
Hmm.
putting in these what staple stairs or something like that,
Yeah, yeah,
um, so that we can scale the mountain. I guess just should take a step back. We get to the mountain. Yeah, Boney starts to bark. People are saying, "Wow, there's a bunch of these Drago marks all over." That's very
right.
weird. They don't usually act that way. So I think this is our first instance of, the first instance that we're aware of where like animals are acting strangely, um,
Yeah,
in a way that is not typical for them. Um, which we saw that in Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings as well. Um, so
sure.
yes, so Duster makes the ladder. We go up there. We get the piece of clothing from the mother that was on this tree,
Yeah.
a branch up there, which I thought it kind of reminded me of those like spires that you use to transport, um, in like Earthbound.
Mm.
You know how there's always like that one like weird needle that's kind of standing up there. Then I saw more of the branches, and then I was like, oh, okay, well maybe I'm just reaching here. Um, but it did look weird.
Well, I mean, iconically, there's that gravestone of the great grandmother. It's in a similar position, right? It's like on the edge of a cliff
Hmm.
in Earthbound Beginnings. And this is like this token of the mother that's placed prominently on a edge of a cliff here. So there is definitely something going on. Um, we'll see pretty soon. We'll see those spiral shaped houses
Hmm.
and the people they belong to. But yeah, there's certainly like a visual echo here of some kind.
Yes.
It's it's very ominous. Yeah, like there's these huge scratches and bite marks, and then there's this scrap of cloth, and it's like no way they would like kill the mom character this fast, right? Like they wouldn't do that. But of course, it's just as bad as you can imagine, right? It's like um, there's this weird sort of irony that's established where like the player is pretty sure that she's dead, whereas no one in the game can possibly like wrap their heads around that at all. Like there's no way she's like actually gonna be dead, um, with the possible exception of Flint, right? Because he's not speaking at all. But yeah, so up at the top, um, that's where we fight the caribou,
Hmm.
and we see the pig mask guys, who are sort of bumbling and like comedic, except also awful, right? And they have like a notebook where they've written their plan, which is to like make everything modified and make it tougher and
Rougher.
badder,
Yeah.
rougher, tougher, badder. Yeah, and so there's like this sort of horrible like marketing lingo that they're using. it bears repeating that Itoi like is a essentially like a copywriter, like that's his job. He writes slogans and sells stuff when he's not being like a creative genius with video games. So I guess he's maybe sort of poking fun at himself here a little bit. I'm not sure. And it's like this weird, yeah, amalgam of the digital, the technological, and the natural. That he's like pointing out this is like bad and dangerous anyway.
Yeah.
So gosh, yeah, but I love having Duster in the party because he can basically like incapacitate the enemy with the wall staples, which is super helpful. Um,
Oh well, that would have been good to know if I had actually
yeah, they
tried
all
that.
skills. The dog skill is pretty useless. It's to sniff and like tell you enemy weaknesses.
Yeah, no, I used the one for Flint and I used the one for the
Mhm.
dog. I just thought that the staples was like I was like, oh, this isn't going to do anything. I just assumed it wouldn't do anything. I don't know. I was like, oh, that's just
It
to build
does.
ladders. I was like, I'm not building a ladder here. I'm fighting a bionic caribou.
Right. No, no, it's essentially the slime generator of this game.
Uh,
It I don't know if it always works, but when it connects, it just like takes them out of combat for like 3 turns. It's awesome.
Interesting. I'll have to know.
Yeah.
I assume that Dustar comes back into our party
Mhm.
because he does
Mhm.
leave. Oh no, wait. Never mind. I need to jump ahead till beginning of chapter 2. So
Yeah.
yes, you definitely do play as him. Um, but yeah, I wonder if the design of the guys in like the pig costumes, if that was like a stormtrooper reference. That's kind of
Right, yeah.
that's what I thought of, and it's like the stormtroopers are like these bumbling idiots, who are actually kind of dangerous, but not really
Yeah.
ever seen as like a true threat. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I
Yeah,
get
they're
from these
just
guys.
yeah, it's unclear if these are like actually the same two guys that we keep seeing. I mean, it seems like they are. So they sort of have a personality, and it is like, they lob grenades and then like run into each other and fall over,
Hmm.
and run away. Like we never can directly confront them because they keep escaping. And they have this sweet UFO that's shaped like a pig and plays this like march tune that's really stupid sounding and
Yeah,
flies around.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, again, it's comedic, but it still has kind of that. Um, uh, I don't know the proper word. It's like it sounds like a German march song or something
Yeah,
like that.
totally.
But yes, with a little bit more uh, kind of goofier, I would say, instrumentals
Mhm.
than what
Mhm.
you would normally hear.
Yeah,
So
and I will just throw in here like throughout the game so far, the music is like decent. It's not like as cool, I would say, as or notably good as the music in either of the previous games. It just sounds a little more generic. But the sound effects are really good. I think that they're like really in your face about like the rain sound effect and the bell sound effect and the fire sound effect. Like that stuff really draws you into the game. And like you said, when you're in the hot springs, right? Like all these little touches of sound effects, I think are great. So um, yeah,
oh,
I like how I can tell that the UFO is playing the music,
right.
right? Like it kind of gets louder and softer as it goes overhead. So stuff like that I really appreciate. Whereas maybe the melodies and stuff aren't quite as good as previous games.
Yeah, when I was playing it, I realized that my hand was like completely covering the speaker on my 2DS. So I was like, man,
Yeah.
the audio in this game is like really quiet. And then I moved my head. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. So maybe I need to get like a pair of headphones so that I can fully hear it.
Yeah.
Um, there are some songs that are reminiscent of Earthbound. There's a couple that it's that eerie, mechanical, almost alien sound. If you
Hmm.
go into certain caves, that you would
Yeah.
also hear in like I'm trying to think of the areas in Earthbound that you would hear it.
Yeah, it's like in caves,
Maybe at like a
I think the
Stonehenge,
music,
or like in
yeah, the music,
in the cave in the Stonehenge or the whatever it's called.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, there's definitely like references to stuff in previous games musically here. Uh, when we meet the gypsies, their song I think is like a direct riff on the Queen Mary's uh, like motif or whatever from Earthbound Beginnings. It's just like a jazzy version of that, basically.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I feel like I probably like the music based on what you just said. I feel like I probably like the music more than you do so far. But I mean, that's completely subjective. Um, so yeah. So what happens? So we climb the cliff. We fight the bionic caribou. We try to continue up the mountain, and then we realize that I guess there was a bridge there that crumbled, so you have to go back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at that time that you find out that your kids um, fell into a river and they were pulled out, um,
Yeah.
and they were cold. And so you go, there's like a bonfire, and you go and meet up with them. And then that's when your boy Bronson comes in. I mean,
So messed
it,
up. Yeah.
yeah, this is, I would like, when this happened, I'm like, wait, what? Like, it just like, this is the worst way that you could have told anyone that like this happened.
Right.
Like he says, "Oh, do you want the good news or the bad news?" You don't even have a choice. He says, "Oh, I'll give you the good news. Uh, I found a Drago Fang, so we can make an awesome weapon out of it. The bad news
Yeah.
was I pulled it from your wife's heart."
It's really interesting. Yeah. The sort of choices that are made here. You could imagine so many ways of delivering that news, right? Like you could actually try to rescue her and then like fail, or you could see her make this great sacrifice that is implied that she like must have sacrificed herself to save the kids, but we don't like actually see that, right? And the kids could tell us that story from their point of view, or we could have a flashback. We could have. There's so many ways, but to have it delivered in this particular way is very striking, right? Like it gives you whiplash, really, as you're like, are you serious? Like that's the way you chose to have this moment land. Um, and I don't know how to interpret that other than to say like it really um, undercuts the seriousness of this like thing, which is like the most serious thing really that we could imagine. Again, based on like everything we've seen so far, like this is the worst thing that has ever happened to anybody in this place that they've ever heard of happening, right? And
Or
um,
in I think or the Mother series period.
sure, yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
maybe I think we talked about this at the end of Bound Beginnings. It's like implied that Teddy died, um, but
Hmm.
I guess that was kind of like retconned in later
Yeah.
releases. They changed that, and then Everdread in
Hmm.
Earthbound. I think he's another one who's like it's implied that he dies, um, but certainly no one like this close to the main character um, has died. And yeah, yeah, I don't just like my mouth is just like open, like just completely agape when Bronson says this. I'm like, wait, I'm like, so she's dead, right? Like, got it from the heart. Like, there's nothing, there's no coming back from that, right? Like, how is he, like, but he can't be telling him this way.
Right.
Like, it was so absurd. Um, and I guess, if you live in a place where nothing bad ever happens, maybe you don't know how to process this type of
Hmm.
news. But
Hmm.
there's a cemetery there. So it's not like these people are immortal. People die. I mean, there's like
Hmm.
even like an undertaker. Um,
Yeah,
so you would think that like there's no excuse for this guy to like not understand the severity of the gravity of the situation.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's just very, very strange. It totally, uh, uh, yeah, it makes it really difficult to call it. quite a cliche, which it totally is, right? Like having a character die um, as a way to really give some, weight and gravitas to the story, right? Um, and it's so over the top. Then Flint's reaction, right, is pretty striking. He like smashes the fire and waves a burning log around and like beats up a couple of the neighbors who try to restrain him because he's like making an ass of himself in front of the kids. Um, but he doesn't care at all. And then Lumber like whacks him with the big stick, knocks him out cold, and essentially he misses the funeral as a result. Like he's KO'd while they're interring the body of his wife up on another cliff, yet another, high place with a gravestone. Um, and and so when you wake up, you like are apologizing to everybody, but everyone's like, oh, it's okay, like we understand, you're sad. Um, and then immediately you're on this further quest, right? The quest unfurls once more because the boy Klaus, the bold twin, like lets you out basically, like gives you a nail file or whatever, a metal file hidden in an apple core,
Well,
and then like disappears. Right, he goes off to fight the Drago, um,
yes.
and Lucas is like weeping uncontrollably and like hasn't stopped crying the entire time, and yet is somehow blamed for letting his brother run off, which is awful. The grandpa like berates him for being a fool, like in front of everyone, and he runs off crying to like um, commiserate with Boney. And so neither of them joins you this time. You're on your own. But Alec, the grandpa, does come along, and he's very strange also. Uh, so if race is in some way implied earlier, it's here that like gender and sexuality get kind of highlighted, um, because Alec is like, oh, like it'll be fine. I have these friends that are going to help us find Klaus. They're kind of odd, but you'll like them, right? And they're these like trans immortal beings, essentially like fairies, in both senses of the word, who live in this conch shell house, in this kind of like hidden nook across a river that the frogs help you get to, and they again, it's like this very weird combination of like seriousness and frivolity because they're like, oh, like it's fine. You'll totally find the kid in time. And like we can't even really care that much about human lives. They're so short, right?
Yeah.
But also like we taught the kid this powerful psi technique, so we helped already. Like it's just weird, and then they like sort of take it seriously after a second. They're like they all have these names of different musical tone systems, and one of them I think is Doria, who's like the butchest of them all, and is like no, this is very serious. Like we have to help the humans. We have to understand how scared and needy they are, and so then they all are telling you that they hope that it goes well. They're praying for you basically, but they don't teach you a psi skill. I noticed. Yeah. Anyway, so just
Yeah.
weird. What did you
Um,
make of the Magicians?
yeah, with the pixel art, I it's hard to necessarily know exactly what they look like, but yes, they did look like cross dresser, I guess. I don't know, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
um, the sharing of both feminine and masculine qualities.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting that they talked about. Yeah, oh, humans' lives are so short, like we don't care anyway. I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, I guess. Um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like we can't
They
get like, who cares? Yeah, I guess just like the
they
whole apathy was just like a very weird thing. It's like, well, why do you live on Earth if you're these like non-human beings and you don't particularly care about humans? Like, where did
right.
they come from? Like,
They
what are their origin? I guess.
they seem to be related to Magicant, right? Based on their house,
Yeah,
and they seem to have psi abilities, or at least know about psi. So maybe they're aliens, maybe they're Magicant dwellers, maybe both. um, and they have some kind of connection to the family, right? So again, there's this like special quality about this one family related to the grandfather, who apparently has like had adventures with them before. Um, and once he's like in that mode again of like thinking about them and referring to them, he starts talking like them.
Yeah,
He starts like throwing in like heart emojis in his speech, and sort of like not being exactly flirtatious, but being really, you know, uh, cute with Flint, who's just lost his wife and may have lost his child now. So
yeah.
it's just very weird. It's like telling you to smile, telling you to cheer up, take things, not take things so seriously. Um,
Not to
and so
mention,
again,
it's Alec's
yeah.
daughter and grandson.
Well, yeah.
So like
He
it's
also,
not even
yeah.
like a, oh, he doesn't understand the severity. Like he wasn't actually affected by this in like a meaningful way. It's just more of a yeah, like he was also, it's like, dude, maybe you need to be like a little bit more serious about this.
Right. So I don't know quite again how to take that. It's like on the one hand, we are um, cutting out some of the like attempt at seriousness and like weighty storytelling, whatever. We're not taking ourselves too seriously, sure. But on the other hand, we're like um, as a player, sort of like pushing back against that and be like, no, like this player character of mine should feel this way. This should be a really important thing, and it's not right to make light of it. So
Especially
I
when you're
don't
traversing a cave that's pitch black,
right.
with very strong enemies in there.
Yeah.
Like like those like rock dragons or
Mm-hmm.
lizards are in there, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't think, can you even kill them? I think I just ran away.
You can. It's easier if you hit them with the power smash, which
Okay.
usually misses.
Yeah.
Um, and it's only. I mean, you can beat them in a few turns, but they definitely hit hard. And
Yeah.
the good thing is they drop beef jerkies,
Yeah.
which pretty much will restore whatever HP you lose against them. So they're tough. And then the trees start attacking you
Oh god,
and
not the
bursting into flames
trees.
and killing you. So, yeah, so there's definitely a bit of a spike here, difficulty wise. But did you notice that Alec will revive you if you take a mortal blow? He'll
Y-
at least sometimes he'll use like a medicinal herb, which will keep you from dying.
Yeah,
Um,
so when I got to the boss at the end of the chapter, I had run
mhm,
out of all of my items to replenish my health. And
mhm.
so I was just seeing if I could kill it before um my life reached to zero. And yeah, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 times that he healed me before he ran out.
Yeah. Oh, so he does eventually run out of the item. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. He did it for me a few times when like the tree would call a friend into battle, and then my attack would go through and kill the tree, and I'd get one-shotted by it bursting into flames, but there'd still be this enemy there, so I couldn't get out of battle quickly enough. Yeah, it's it's pretty gnarly. You do also find like some bombs, which are cool because it's what the pigs have been using, but you also can use these bombs in battle. Um, it's pretty handy. Wes will give you a thunder bomb. You go and talk to him.
Hmm.
Um, so there are some things that help you, but it definitely poses a bit of a challenge here towards the end of this chapter. Um, again, we're left sort of in suspense because we don't know for sure what has happened to Klaus. We find a couple shoes, right? So there's like this echo of what happened to Hinawa. Um, we, I guess, restrain at least momentarily from delivering the final blow against the Drago that's been like modified.
Hmm.
Because its baby comes out and like protects it. So again, there's this definite kind of mirror effect that's happening here, where um, the animals and the humans are reacting in like very recognizable ways.
Yeah. And did you take it? Um, uh, when I saw the baby Drago, I assumed that that was the same one that we had dealt with at the beginning of the game,
Yeah,
in
I
our
think
dashing
so.
tutorial.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like this is not just like any dragon, but one that the kids know well and are friends with, which makes it extra awful. What happened? Uh, the suggestion, I guess, is that Klaus is okay. He's like lying at the bottom of a crevasse, kind of in the background, where you can't really reach him. Um, but
That's
yeah, we
interesting.
don't know quite how this ends. Did you notice that? Like it sort of pans up and you see him back there.
Yeah, no, I assumed that he was
Yeah.
Gonzo.
Oh, but I thought since we see his body, that made me think he must have survived.
That's a
He's
good
just
point.
out cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's not like
it's not like
got a
Nintendo's
fang in him.
gonna show a dead Pixel Boy
Right.
in any of their games. I wouldn't get past. Maybe that's why it's not hasn't been released in America, because they don't think that the public could handle that. Um,
Maybe, maybe.
but yes,
It's so weird. The way the game is structured is in these chapters, right? Um, and it is very like dramatic, and this sort of these scenes like flow into one another. Um, but it makes it hard to tell really how much time is actually passing, also, or like where we are in the timeline, because at the end of the chapter we get like a flashback to the last time we saw Duster, where he's hanging out by the prison or the sheriff's office or whatever, and he
hmm
says like, "If you need me, just holler." And this time Flint speaks, which doesn't happen when you're playing that part of the game. He says something like "thanks" or whatever. And so this is like the handoff to being Duster now as your playable character for Chapter 2. Um, and it's unclear if this is like during that same night, when everything's happening up on the mountain. Now we're going to do something with Duster down in town, or if this is, you know, when exactly this is supposed to be taking place. It's interesting. It's complex, I guess.
yeah, I didn't expect there to be uh, like concurrent timelines going on where you're.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
listen, I like that type of storytelling, like in movies and stuff like that. Um, I wonder if this is going to severely hinder kind of the open worldness of this game. If we're playing
Right.
in these kind of segmented chapters, it doesn't seem like there can be much deviation um, from the script. I mean, you can obviously talk to all the townspeople and immerse yourself that way, but I wonder how
Mm.
much uh, you're going to be able to explore.
Yeah.
Which that's part of whatever. I mean, so far the game's good. I don't have any qualms. I
Totally.
so I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm going to give Shigesato Itoi the benefit of the doubt here. One thing I thought was weird, uh, and you just kind of touched on it. There are mirrors in like some of the houses,
Oh yeah.
which I don't know if those weren't put into Earthbound because it was like they were incapable of doing so. But I think with the whole like kind of mirror images and that kind of stuff, the duality, um, the, why
Yeah.
those mirrors are in there because they don't serve any function. Um, and
Not so far.
the only other
Yeah.
time you see someone's reflection, I think, is in the Apple of Enlightenment at the end boss um,
Yeah.
of Earthbound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just flexing their programming like ability and like, hey, look, we can do a weird mirror in here. But
Yeah.
and I think it said
Yeah.
like you're looking good or something with if you check it.
Yep. Yeah. It tells you you're looking handsome.
Yeah,
Um, and then it like also sometimes will chastise you. It's like now's not the time for that.
right.
And yeah. So I guess we can sort of explore town. In between, we can go into a lot of the places that were closed the night before and talk to some people and get a little bit more of the feel of this place. But you're right, like it's pretty linear so far. Um, and just in terms of like what's going on, we're very much pushed to like uh, move the plot as well. So not just like in terms of where we can go, but sort of how events are unfolding. Everything is very one way driven right now.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't remember if the mirrors ever do anything other than just uh, yeah, show off a little bit. But it's kind of interesting that um, the Magypsies are one of the places where those mirrors show up, uh, and they seem very interested in fashion and like appearance. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that. But I
Yeah.
like that point. Yeah, everything thematically is in terms of duality, and then we also have this like visual reminder of that here. So,
Yeah. And I
good
guess one
stuff.
more thing I want to comment before I'm done with this, or done with my thoughts. Uh, yeah, I guess in terms of the linearity, there are so many cutscenes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's important to bring up. It drags a bit, I gotta say.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as bad. I think there's a couple cutscenes where it's like your character walks over, or someone walks, and it's like a couple seconds before they start talking, and it's like,
Hmm.
can we speed this up a little bit, please? Um,
Yeah,
it, there, there,
yeah,
there's a lot. So obviously, I guess the storytelling ability um, is enhanced. I guess. I mean, you
yeah,
actually see Flint wielding the bonfire stick and swinging at people and doing stuff like that, which
right.
I feel like in the other games, or at least in Earthbound, it's the Runaway Five doing a performance, or you're riding in the bus, or in the Sky Runner, or stuff like that, or it's the guy in the crane coming over, but they're very short. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like they're spaced out. Here, it's just a lot, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely noticed that, and uh, it kind of goes to the thing you said about the characters' names. Like, I don't know if all these characters will be that important, like that they all need a name to go with them, but um, it's definitely showing like an attempt to tell a story that's got more going on. Yeah, it's doing something a little more interesting, or um, you know, requiring a little more of the player in terms of like keeping track of things. And
Yes.
yeah, and I don't know if the time delay is like built in intentionally, or if that's something that they needed for whatever reason. But it is, yeah, a little slow. Uh,
Yeah, and you can't get through the text very, very quickly. It's not even like you can mash through it or skip it. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I guess Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings seemed like very similar games. This seems like a big departure from those two. It's definitely like different. I'm not saying that's in a bad way, but uh, I guess I'm just excited to see where this goes, because like I have no idea.
yeah, yeah. It's been long enough since I played that I don't remember really much about it. I don't remember for sure who the other playable characters are actually.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
All right. Well, I guess I don't know how long it'll take us to get through chapter two. Uh, do you know how many
no
chapters
idea.
there are in this game?
I'm gonna guess 8. I'm gonna
Oh,
go
that
with 8.
that would make sense.
Because that's like the magic number for the series. And we sort of had that prologue, so there might be some other stuff like intermissions and extra stuff at the end. But um, yeah, we can go back to sort of doing like the hour per week thing. But since we took a couple weeks off, I wanted to get a good chunk here
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah. Well, and plus it's the first discussion, so I feel like you kind of have to
Yeah,
come out with the most content possible. Um, all
yeah.
right. Well, yeah. So I guess we'll see where we get to in about an hour or so, and then we'll discuss
Mhm.
it next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Goodbye to everyone.